So we want to talk a little bit on how to feel closer to Master, how to be with him more often. You know, the relationship with the Guru is like an extension of the highest relationship that we can think of. It's a kind of a combination of love, but love uplifted, which is devotion, and friendship, and the desire to be with someone. And so all of those kinds of relationships we experience already in our lives. There's also an element of us being a chela or a child. In the West, they don't have the word chela, unfortunately, until it was introduced. But it's always the disciple. And disciple is good, but it also implies discipline. And the Guru, while he will discipline us, that's not his primary relationship. His primary relationship is one of, I can't even say gently loving. It's one of constantly loving and trying to help us, his beloved children, to come up to our full potential. So often people have a mistaken thought that the reason I meditate is to please Master. The reason I energize is he said I have to energize. I hate energizing, but he said I have to do it, so I'll energize in order to please Master. And there's a little bit of benefit to that kind of thought. But it's a little bit like saying, I will take this medicine to please the doctor. Not that I'm going to take this medicine because it's good for me. The doctor, honestly, does not care whether you take the medicine or not. He knows that it will help you be happy, help you be healthy. But once he dispenses the medicine, it's up to you whether you're going to take it or not, and whether you want to be healthy, whether you want to recover from your illness. In this case, Master has dispensed some medicine or medication, but he's flipped one letter in there, so it's not medication, it's meditation. And if we take that medication, then we will become spiritually healthy. And if we don't, we'll continue to try to recover on our own, and we won't quite be able to. But it's not about pleasing him as the dispenser of the wisdom that he's trying to help us. Now, naturally, there's a little turn of that. It's not like he's indifferent. So here I've been talking about the doctor. The doctor's a few steps away, and you can well imagine that the doctor, once he's given you the medication, he doesn't much care whether you take it or not. He's got other patients, he's got a busy life, he's got other things that he has to do, and he hopes that you'll get well, but it's not. But if it's your mother giving you that medication, that's a whole different story. So you sort of please her, but it isn't really that. She's eager to see you to regain your health. And so she'll keep watching over you to make sure that you do whatever you're supposed to do in order to do it, in order to be healthy. But it's not even then like you're doing it to please her. She's eager to see you become healthy, but you're doing it for yourself, really. So the soul is trying to recover from its disease of spiritual ignorance, is what we're really trying to do. And so in the recovery process, these great masters come and they give us some techniques, they give us some attitudes, they give us some relationships, and they say, if you can incorporate these into your mindset, into your way of living, then it will make you healthy. And it's a gradual process. I was reading last night something that Master had written about both Lahiri Mahashaya and Sri Yukteswar. And he talked about how great Lahiri Mahashaya was, because what Lahiri Mahashaya brought was a series of techniques that Master called, this was one of his very early writings, he called it the ladder to self-realization. And so step by step, as we follow the things that Lahiri gave us, and that's what we were doing this morning in our meditation. Lahiri gave us, obviously, the technique of Kriya Yoga. That was primarily his mission in reincarnating. So he gave us that technique of Kriya Yoga. But he gave us also the other techniques that go along with it. The Hong Sa technique, the Om technique. There's a part in Lahiri's writings where you actually do the Kriya while listening to the Om. And it's called Omkar Kriya. But we don't teach that as a technique necessarily, but nonetheless, as we get deeper in our Kriyas, we naturally hear the sound of Om, especially when we have practiced the Om technique for some time. So without going into it too much, Lahiri has laid out a path, or a ladder, as Master was referring to it, whereby as we take these steps, we grow closer and closer. And what Master said is basically the good disciple or the good chela is the one who follows these and very much in terms of their own self wants to become realized, wants to become unified with God. And so we're self-motivated, and when we're self-motivated, then we're very eager to take whatever the Guru has given us and use it, especially when the Guru has given us such a clear and usable and possible path. As Master described Kriya, he said, Lahiri Mahashaya came with the gift of very simple and usable techniques by which we can achieve the goal of realization of the self or unity with God. Because, many yogic techniques can get very complex and very difficult, and only those who are highly adept are able to follow them. Remember in the autobiography, Master talked about two people who were living their entire adult life without eating. And one was Teresa Neumann in Germany, Bavaria, and she did it primarily through devotion and through her deep relationship with Christ. And she would go into a state where she saw Christ every Friday. She would, because that's considered the day on which he was crucified, she would see that whole process and experience it and go through the pain of it. But all of that closeness to her chosen guru, in this case Jesus, allowed her to be so close that she lived off the prana. She lived off the energy coming from Jesus. As he said himself, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God. Meaning that we don't live primarily off of outer things, off of food, off of water, sunshine, air, any of that. We live primarily from what proceedeth from the mouth of God is the Om, or the vibration of prana. And these outer things are simply prana in a kind of a packaged form. So we can go and buy pre-packaged prana, but if we can learn to live on that prana alone, then we don't need the outer pre-packaged part of it. And the other one was Moni Ma, who he talked about, but she said that she practiced a pranayama technique that was too complicated and too difficult for the typical person. And so there are many techniques of yoga that are too difficult and too challenging for most people to be able to practice. But Kriya is not one of those. Any sincere seeker who has been properly taught the technique and puts their own will into it, anyone can practice that. So Lahiri brought this ladder of self-realization, but along with that, he brought his own model of a lifestyle. So if he had brought this ladder, but then stayed in the Himalayas with Babaji, how many of us could relate to that as being something that we could do? But he came and spent 22 years as an accountant. How many of us can relate to that? Everyone in the room. Oh my God, I've got to go to the office again today. I don't like my work, but I got to, And so he modeled for us the life that we are all needing to live. But he didn't model just the typical life of complaining. He modeled the life. He modeled the life of someone who does it in the highest way. So he would go to work, and then he would come home, and he would have his Kriya Sanghas or his Gita Sanghas. And he would sit all night in the lotus posture, dispensing wisdom, and then go back to the office. So he was like us, but not quite like us. He was like us and like what we need to try to become. That's the real thing that he was modeling. So even there you can see a ladder that starts with a life that looks like the first step that we can all step onto. But then through the practice of Kriya, through the practice of right attitude and all of that, we begin to ascend that ladder of self-realization until, if we stay with it, Master said that Kriya works like spiritual mathematics. That ultimately, if we stay with it, if we practice our Kriyas to the best of our ability, then we will, like spiritual mathematics, it will add up eventually to self-realization. Now, that doesn't mean that we can just sit down and practice a few Kriyas and go into Samadhi. We could if we were really ready. In fact, Master said that to one disciple. He said, if you really willed it, you could go into God's self-realization at this very moment. And the disciple said, Master said, if you really had the faith that you could do that. And the disciple said, essentially, yes, but we can't do that just by thinking, can we, Master? And Master said, well, you've answered your own question. We can, in fact, if we eliminate all of the naysaying elements in our consciousness. So if there's a pure understanding and acceptance of Master saying that at this very moment we can become self-realized, then we could. But we're working to some extent to erode that naysaying quality, the self-doubts, and it's not just, the conscious mind is just like a little skim on top of the ocean. Our whole consciousness, it's the soul, and it's probably tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of incarnations. It's all the accumulated karma, all of that. But that doesn't mean that it is anything other than consciousness. And if we have the right consciousness, then we can achieve self-realization. So, what I'm talking about here are those things which will draw us closer to the Guru. And so one is to do what the Guru has given us to do. If we say, oh, Master, I want to be close to you, I want to be close to you, and Master says, well, there are some things that you need to do then. You need to meditate every day. Oh, Master, I want to be close to you, I want to be close to you, but I don't want to meditate every day. You don't really mean that I need to meditate every day, do you? Well, we answer our own question that way. Same with Kriya. All of these things and there aren't very many things that Master has told us we really need to do. It's really a very simple path, and even with a simple path, Master said, if you do 1/100th of what I tell you to do, you will achieve your goal. But that looks at his whole teaching. You can't say, oh, I'll skip Kriya, that's 1%. I'll skip energization, that's a second, that's 2%. And then finally you get up to, I'll look at his picture. He told me to look at his picture. That's the 1% that I'll do. No, it doesn't work that way. But we have to make our sincere effort. But Master gave lots and lots of teachings, lots and lots of attitudes and techniques and understandings, because each of us is different. It's like he spread out a huge banquet of 100 dishes, and he doesn't expect us to have to eat all 100 of those, but he does expect us to eat the main ones and then pick a few that work for us. So we need to do to the best of our ability. We need to produce in our daily life and in our long-range habits, day after day after day, we need to do those things that he said are really important. And basically, it's energization, Hong Sa, Om, Kriya, and then the right attitudes of devotion, of service, of those things. I'll come back to that. But we do need, on our part, if we want to be closer to Master, we do need to have a deep inner, self-driven, self-motivated commitment to do what he did. And again, as I say, not to please him, but because it is what he told us will help us get out of the delusion that we're in. Those of you who have Kriya have already heard this, but there are some who don't have Kriya. This isn't part of the secret teaching, but Master said that every Kriya that we do burns off the equivalent of a whole year of living. And so all of those billions and billions of seeds of karma that reside in the astral spine, as we do Kriya, and as we concentrate after Kriya at the spiritual eye, that's the true fire ceremony. So the true yajna is to do Kriya. In fact, Lahiri Mahashaya, when someone asked him, what did Krishna mean by karma yoga? Lahiri Mahashaya said, Kriya is karma yoga. Kriya is the action that we do. Karma and Kriya are related words, and karma has the implication of action that is binding because there's an action and reaction, whereas Kriya has the implication of action that unbinds us. And so doing Kriya is the true Nishkam karma that Krishna was talking about in the Gita. And so as we do that, it burns up those seeds of karma that keep the mind in a state of delusion and keep the consciousness from saying, I'm separate, and being separate, I can't merge with God. We're burning up all of those thousands and thousands of patterns of thought that we've had in the past. And so as we do the techniques, we become more and more able to do the techniques, and it all works seamlessly. So the practice of the techniques, the practice of the teachings, is one of the primary ways that we grow close and closer to Master. I'll touch on two more. The second one is by service. Master said that his path was a combination of meditation and of service. And so our desire to serve is not only part of the spiritual path, but it is to a large extent that which will clean us from the delusion that we have. And the more powerfully we have that desire, the more we, from our own self, sincerely and deeply want to serve the Guru. And there are many ways to do that. Helping out at the center. But it doesn't have to be always Ananda related. God and Master love everyone in this world. And so it doesn't have to be just helping out at the center. It might be helping somebody who needs your help. It might, but as you do that, do it on behalf of God. God is doing this through me. Master is doing this through me. When we asked Swami one time, some years ago, why does it take so long to achieve self-realization? We're kind of saying we don't seem to be making as much progress toward that as we would like. He just paused and he said, the whole of the spiritual path is the dissolving of the ego, overcoming the ego, the sense, the delusion of separation. And he said that is done by longer, deeper meditation. Now, he was talking to us specifically, but with all of us being sincere disciples, this is the advice for all sincere disciples. Longer and deeper meditation. And then he said the second is service, but he put it in a particular way. It isn't just doing things. He said longer, deeper meditation and seeing God as the doer in everything. That turn of consciousness is absolutely essential, because if we think that we're serving, that is karma yoga, it isn't kriya yoga. Because the thought, I am serving, I am doing this, that I always creates karma. And so if I am doing that, even a good thing, if we have that underlying thought, then we will create karma. It undoubtedly, if we're serving others, will be good karma. Nonetheless, chains of gold still bind. We're at the point where we don't want to create any karma. We don't want to create a great big bank account of good karma, because we're going to have to spend that down to zero in order to, our bank account, by the time we achieve self-realization, can't be in the debit side and it can't be in the plus side. It's all got to even out. And so we don't want to do our service thinking, oh, I'm really going to get good karma for this. We had a beautiful example of this. We have a very generous member of Ananda, and she has helped many projects. But she, in a very delicate way, talking very sensitively to Devi and me, she said, I'm concerned about this because I don't want any ego involved in this whatsoever. She said, I don't want to accumulate karma in doing this, even if it's good karma. She said, I don't want any ego involvement. Basically, please help me continue that consciousness that I'm not the doer here, that God is the doer. So if we can keep that consciousness, that we're not doing what we do. After all, once you get past the level of ego, call it the plane, the delusive miasma, the dream of all these separate egos, there's only one dreamer. There's only one dreamer dreaming each one of us. And that one dreamer is acting through each one of us. And so we no more do what we think we're doing than when you dream at night and some character in your dream perhaps picks up something. That dream character isn't actually picking up anything. You, the dreamer, are dreaming him in the act of picking up something. And so God, the dreamer of us, is dreaming us in the act of serving. At this point, He's dreaming us in the act of being here, having satsang together. He's dreaming me holding the microphone, and you holding your ears, and all of us participating. But holding the microphone is no more important part of that dream than listening. It's all one. It's all one. And it's only God that is doing everything. And so as we act, the more we can hold on to that consciousness that it is only God who is acting through us, then whatever we do will be Kriya Yoga. It will be action. Kriya has the connotation of action. It will be action, but action which frees, instead of Karma Yoga, action which binds. And so doing that pure Kriya Yoga action, Kriya Yoga in meditation, Kriya Yoga out of meditation. It's all Kriya Yoga if we can understand properly. And that's why Lahiri Mahashaya also said, Kriya Yoga is the solution to every problem. When I first heard that, I thought, well, yes, pleasant little kind of, I don't know, soupy sentiment. But, we've got real problems here. We've got no housing and we've got rain coming. And how are we going to solve that with Kriya Yoga? We got to get out there. We got to get some housing going here. Us, me, mine. We got to get going here. And all that does is create more delusion. So, Kriya Yoga, meaning that we still need housing, but it isn't we who needs housing. It's God who has the desire not to be rained on. If there's a desireless desire for that, and it's God dreaming through us that he needs housing, she needs housing, and therefore will participate in that drama and produce housing. And so every problem that you face, every difficulty, every angst, every worry that you have cannot be solved by solving the angst or the worry or the problem. Because doing that is, even doing it well, is still karma yoga. It's going to create more karma. Solving that problem can be done by Kriya Yoga. You may still take exactly the same action, but in one case, you think that you're doing it. And in the other case, you kind of are enjoying the fact that God is doing this through you. And in that kind of service, ultimately, we become completely freed from any binding ego, any binding sense of self that thinks that I have done this, I have achieved this, I am owed this, I own this. All of that disappears. So Kriya Yoga is in fact the solution to everything. But Kriya Yoga not only in meditation, Kriya Yoga also in service. Ultimately, we grow so desirous of serving Master or serving Babaji or serving Christ in this way that we don't care what happens to us. In fact, there's a certain sense that we relish either something negative happening or nothing at all coming back to us, because we understand that it's freeing. It's a little easier for us to leave the attachment to stubbing our toe than it is to leave the attachment to someone giving us a winning lottery ticket. See, it's easier to let go of those negative things. So in terms of wanting to be free of ego from doing outward Kriya Yoga, it's almost better to desire that we either get nothing or that it be slightly unpalatable. I like the phrase that Patanjali used. He said, a disinclination toward that kind of activity. One grows a disinclination. And so, as we act so that we get either nothing back or we get something back that produces in us a slight disinclination to continue to have that back. An example of this, there's a very popular, very well-known saint of this century in Italy. His name was Padre Pio, and he was a great, great saint. He spent essentially his whole adult life just hearing confession, which was his way of giving advice to people. There are many funny stories about him too. People would hand him envelopes, and he would know what's in the envelope, and he would just grant that wish. And so people would line up and just hold out their envelopes. And this one man was holding out his envelope, and Padre Pio went like that. I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to take that. Inside the envelope was a lottery ticket. And so this man was asking Padre Pio to bless him so he would win the lottery. Padre Pio wouldn't take it. One time, a politician came. Padre Pio lived in a very remote little village, In fact, he was such a great saint that he was an embarrassment to the Catholic Church, because a great saint like that, who's a priest, makes all the other priests look like maybe they aren't quite equal to that. So they put him in this tiny little village in a very remote place, but his power was such that throngs of people came. So he was popular throughout all of Italy. One time a politician came, and he had a big motorcade, and he had the police on motorcycles and the flags in front of him, and the police on motorcycles behind him, leading him, and he proudly got out of his car, and he came up and wanted Padre Pio's blessing, basically as a photo opportunity, so it could be on the news. And Padre Pio just said, "Go away. In my day, the police chased the crooks. They didn't lead them." Had a good sense of humor. But his desire to serve Jesus was so strong that he actually became like Jesus, and he was one of the few that displayed what's called the stigmata. That's the wounds that were given to Jesus on the cross. And so all of his adult life, Padre Pio bled from his hands and his feet, never stopping. And the holes went all the way through, and there was great pain. But he didn't, it wasn't like the pain bothered him. It wasn't that he wanted the pain. He wanted to merge with the consciousness of Jesus. And so he didn't care whether his body experienced some pain or not. And he wanted to help. He wanted to be the channel by which Jesus, the divine, Mother Mary, the form of the divine, could help other people. And so people would come to him and they would ask him, "Can you help? My sister has cancer. Can you help with that?" And he would help, partly by taking the karma on his own body. We went to this little town and we stayed with someone who was, we would say in India, his disciple, his chela. In fact, she said there were a group of him that were all Padre Pio's children. And Padre Pio, she said one time, Padre Pio said to his group of children, "I've just received a prayer request, and he basically said, I'm full up with everything I can handle right now. Will all of you participate? It's going to mean that you're going to get a flu or a cold or something, but will you help take this karma?" Now, we can't as regular people do that, but Padre Pio could do it, and he was using these people who were close to him to serve because he wanted to serve the divine. And of course everybody agreed and so on. But here what I'm saying is that we get to the point in service where we absolutely do not care what happens to us, or whether we're doing something, whether we like it or not. It isn't about, oh, I like to do this activity and I don't like to do that activity, so I'll pick and choose. Out of those 100 things, I'll pick only the ones I like and leave all the rest. We just do what's in front of us the very, very best we can, but always trying to hold on to the consciousness that it is the divine doing it through us, that we are not doing it. And I'll end with the last thing that will keep us close to Master. So deep meditation, deep service, and feeling that Master is always with us, always present. And that means that if you can 100 times a day, your mind goes back to Master. When you are walking, you feel that Master's walking with you. When you have a problem, you say, "What should we do about this, Master? Please advise me." When you have a difficulty or a sorrow, you simply share that with Master. Master, I'm so sad. I just got news that my mother is terminally ill. Master, I'm so sad here. I know that you went through that. Master, help me go through this. So that everything, Master becomes the reference point for everything that happens to you. And the more you can keep your mind coming back to Master all the time, the more, see, He's already with you. It isn't that that consciousness will draw Him. He's already there. But you aren't there. You're off in your worries. You're off in your projects. You're off in the, I'm going to accomplish this, or I'm worried about this, or whatever it is. We're off in our forgetfulness. And so really what we have to try to do is overcome our forgetfulness. Chant Master's name over and over, or Om Guru. That's, I said yesterday, not everyone was here, that Swami said that Master suggested 2 mantras, Om Guru or Reveal Thyself. So let the mind become filled with that. Om Guru. Om. I asked Swamiji when I was just early on the path, is there some mantra I should chant? That you would give me? He said, I'll give you what Master said, Om Guru. Said, just keep repeating that, Om Guru, Om Guru. But as you repeat it, try to get closer and closer to Master. Visualize Him. See Him. Feel Him with you. And if you can turn your mind 100 times a day to Master, He will be there all the time, but you will know that He's there 100 times a day. He's always there. If you can turn your mind 1,000 times a day to Master, He will be there present for you 1,000 times a day. But it's your part, not His part. And if you can chant Om Guru or Reveal Thyself, thinking of Master, and if that can become a constant repetitive element, He will be there, maybe not at the top of your consciousness, but in your consciousness constantly. And I'll just end with this. One time a friend of ours recently, Swami was only a year or so before his passing. This friend had come, and I think she had visited 4 Garpar Road, or I'm not sure where she had visited, but someplace closely associated with Master. And she said to Swamiji, "Oh, you were there, weren't you, sir?" He said, "Well, yes, of course." And she said, "Didn't you feel Master's presence there?" And Swami kind of paused and looked a little puzzled. And he said, "I feel Master's presence everywhere. I didn't feel it particularly there as not here. I feel Master's presence everywhere." And that's the state of consciousness that we're trying to get to. So deep meditation, deeper, longer meditations, seeing God as the doer in everything, and living in the presence of Master. That's how we will increase our closeness to Him.